The security scanner exploded into crimson warnings the moment Cadet Isabella Jones stepped through the academy gate. And every alien instructor within 50 meters immediately dropped to combat-ready positions. Threat detected. Threat detected. Earthborn entity. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not engage. The mechanical voice shrieked across the Galactic Military Academy's pristine entrance plaza as emergency klaxons began wailing. Isabella froze mid-step, her worn duffel bag still slung over one shoulder, staring at the pulsing red holographic barrier that had materialized around her like she was radioactive. "Ah," she said, raising her hand slowly as 37 different species of alien cadets scrambled for cover behind decorative barriers. "Is this normal?" Commander Azy'la's 8-foot reptilian frame uncoiled from behind the reception desk, where she'd been processing new arrivals, her scaled hands moving with military precision to the plasma rifle mounted on her hip. Her yellow eyes locked onto the small human girl standing confused in the containment field. "Academy Control, this is gate security." Azy'la barked into her comm unit, never taking her eyes off Isabella. "We have a code Crimson at main entrance, requesting immediate backup and threat assessment team." "What the hell is a code Crimson?" whispered Cadet Xy'lar from behind an overturned hover cart, his blue-skinned face pale with terror. Just 30 seconds earlier, he'd been leading a group of senior cadets in mocking the primitive human who was supposedly joining their elite institution. Now his warrior species-enhanced reflexes were screaming at him to run. The scanner's warnings grew more urgent. "Biohazard extreme, extinction class threat detected. All personnel maintain minimum safe distance of 100 meters. 100 meters? Isabella looked around the plaza, which was maybe 60 meters wide. But that would put everyone outside the... "Don't move!" Commander Azy'la's voice cracked like a whip. "Remain absolutely still, Cadet." Isabella blinked. "Okay, but I'm just saying, if your safety protocols require more space than you actually have, that seems like a design flaw." The scanner's pitch climbed to near painful levels. "Warning. Subject demonstrating tactical analysis capabilities. Threat assessment elevated to maximum." "She's analyzing our defenses," whispered a crystalline cadet, whose species communicated through harmonic resonance. The sound was like breaking glass. "The scanner's right. She's evaluating our weaknesses." "I'm not evaluating anything," Isabella protested. "I'm just pointing out that..." She gestured vaguely at the plaza's dimensions, and the scanner immediately erupted into new warnings. "Subject displaying spatial awareness. Movement patterns suggest combat readiness. Recommend immediate evacuation of Sector 7. More alarms joined the cacophony as automated defense systems throughout the academy activated. Emergency blast doors began sealing corridors. Atmospheric processors switched to combat air filtration. The Academy's AI began routing power to defensive shields that hadn't been used since the Vegan War ended 2 centuries ago. Isabella stared at the chaos spreading around her. "Look, I think there's been some kind of mistake. I'm just here for basic military training. My acceptance letter said to report to the main gate at 0800 hours. She started reaching for her backpack to retrieve the documents. "Weapons deployment detected." The scanner's voice had taken on an almost hysterical edge. "Subject accessing unknown devices. All units take cover. Repeat, take cover." Commander Azy'la's rifle was now trained directly on Isabella, though her hands were shaking slightly. In 30 years of military service across 17 different war zones, She had never seen the Academy's threat detection system register readings this high. The scanner was designed to detect planet killers, weapons of mass destruction, and species-ending bioweapons. It was not supposed to activate for individual beings. "Cadet," Azy'la said carefully, "I need you to very slowly place whatever you were reaching for on the ground and step away from it." "It's just my paperwork," Isabella said, confused. She slowly pulled out a manila folder that looked like it had survived several natural disasters. "See? Standard Academy acceptance forms, medical clearance, species compatibility waivers." The scanner fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then it began screaming. "Improvised documentation system detected. Adaptive resource utilization confirmed. Subject has weaponized administrative materials." "Weaponized?" Isabella held up the folder, which was held together with electrical tape and what appeared to be a paperclip. "It's literally just forms." But the scanner was no longer listening to her protests. Emergency protocols throughout the Academy were cascading into full activation. In the command center 15 floors above, Admiral Xy'lar, a being whose species had conquered half the galaxy through pure strategic brilliance, stared at threat readings that made no sense. "Run the diagnostic again," he ordered his technicians. "Sir, we've run it 17 times. The scanner is functioning perfectly." "Then explain to me how a single human cadet is registering threat levels comparable to the destroyer of worlds." His aide, a nervous creature whose species survived by being exceptionally good at detecting danger, was practically vibrating with alarm. "Sir, perhaps we should consider evacuation procedures." "For one human girl?" Admiral Xy'lar's voice carried the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "Absolutely not. But I want every senior officer in the Academy studying those readings. Something is very wrong here." Back in the Plaza, Isabella had noticed that her continued presence was causing visible distress among the alien cadets. Several were showing what looked like panic responses: rapid breathing, color changes, defensive posturing. Her naturally empathetic nature kicked in. "Hey, it's okay," she called out gently to a small, rabbit-like being who was hyperventilating behind a trash receptacle. "I know this looks scary, but I promise I'm not dangerous. I'm actually really bad at fighting. That's why I got assigned to engineering track instead of combat." The scanner's response was immediate and devastating. Psychological warfare capabilities confirmed. Subject employing deception and manipulation. Tactics, threat level, immeasurable. Psychological warfare. Isabella's voice rose in incredulous frustration. I was trying to be nice. Commander Azy'la's comm unit crackled with an incoming priority message from Academy Control. "All units, Code Crimson protocols now in full effect. Specialized containment team en route. Do not attempt engagement under any circumstances." "Copy that, Control," Azy'la replied, though she was beginning to suspect that either their entire security system had suffered a catastrophic malfunction, or they were dealing with something far beyond her training to handle. Isabella shifted her weight slightly, trying to ease the growing ache in her shoulder from holding her position, and the movement triggered a fresh wave of alerts. Tactical repositioning detected, subject adapting to containment protocols. "Oh, come on." Isabella threw her hands up in exasperation. "I can't even stretch without setting this thing off." The gesture, a perfectly normal human expression of frustration, caused the scanner to emit a sound that was less mechanical alarm and more like electronic screaming. Unknown gestural combat form initiated, requesting immediate xenobiology consultation. As emergency teams converged on the plaza and the Academy's most advanced threat assessment protocols struggled to comprehend what they were detecting, Isabella Jones stood in the middle of it all, clutching her battered folder of paperwork and wondering if maybe she should have just stayed home and helped her father fix tractors. The scanner continued its relentless warnings, each one more urgent than the last, while the simple truth remained completely beyond its sophisticated sensors. Sometimes the most dangerous beings in the universe are dangerous precisely because they have no idea how dangerous they are. Dr. Xy'lar arrived in a commandeered emergency transport that screamed across the Academy's airspace at velocities that violated several safety regulations. As the galaxy's leading expert on xenological threats, he had been pulled from a crucial research symposium on Kepler 442b the moment the Academy's distress beacon activated. In 43 years of studying the universe's most dangerous species, he had never received a priority alert quite like this one. The transport's doors hadn't even finished opening before his forearms were deploying, scanning equipment that cost more than most planetary defense budgets. Status report. He snapped at Commander Azy'la, his multifaceted eyes taking rapid measurements of the contained human, while sophisticated sensors analyzed everything from atmospheric composition to quantum field fluctuations. The scanner activated the moment she entered, sir. Threat readings are... Azy'la consulted her datapad with the expression of someone reading her own death sentence. Off the charts. Literally. Our scale doesn't go that high. Dr. Xy'lar's primary scanner beeped cheerfully as it completed its initial sweep. He stared at the readout, then smacked the device with one of his secondary hands. This can't be right. That's what we thought, sir. We've run 17 diagnostics. No, you don't understand. Dr. Xy'lar's voice carried the tone of someone whose worldview was actively crumbling. These readings suggest this individual could theoretically end all biological life in this sector, with minimal effort. Isabella, who had been standing patiently in her containment field for the past 20 minutes, cleared her throat politely. Excuse me, but could someone maybe explain what's happening? I'm supposed to check into my dormitory before 0900, and my roommate is probably wondering where I am. The moment she spoke, every piece of monitoring equipment in the plaza spiked simultaneously. She's doing it again, whispered Cadet Xy'lar, who despite his species' warrior heritage was developing what looked suspiciously like a stress rash. Whatever she's doing to the machines. Dr. Xy'lar deployed his most advanced xenobiology scanner, a device capable of detecting viral agents at the molecular level. I need complete atmospheric samples, biological readings, and quantum resonance patterns. If she's emitting some kind of... The scanner exploded, not metaphorically. The million-credit piece of equipment simply disintegrated into smoking components that scattered across the plaza like expensive confetti. Isabella stared at the wreckage. Oh no. Did I break it? I'm so sorry. This always happens around complex electronics. My mom says I have some kind of weird electromagnetic field or something. Electromagnetic field? Dr. Xy'lar's voice cracked slightly. You're aware that you disrupt technology? Well, yeah. I mean, not on purpose. Isabella looked genuinely apologetic. My dad's a mechanic, so I learned to work around it. You just have to adjust the calibration frequencies and account for the harmonic interference. It's not that hard once you figure out the pattern. She gestured casually toward the remnants of his scanner. If you want, I could probably fix that. Looks like the primary resonator overloaded when it tried to process conflicting data streams. Happens all the time. Every alien in hearing range took an involuntary step backward. She understands the technology, breathed Commander Azy'la. She knows exactly what she did to it. Dr. Xy'lar's remaining scanners were now producing readings that violated several known laws of physics. Cadet, I need you to explain very carefully what you mean by adjusting calibration frequencies. Isabella shrugged. Oh, most alien tech is designed around stable quantum harmonics, right? But humans kind of don't do stable. Our bioelectric patterns fluctuate constantly because of our neural complexity and emotional variability. So when sophisticated equipment tries to get a lock on us, it gets confused by all the dynamic interference. She said this as if she were explaining why grass was green. The solution is pretty straightforward, she continued conversationally. You just need to program the scanners to expect chaos instead of order. Instead of looking for consistent patterns, you tell them to map the inconsistency patterns. It's like the difference between trying to measure a laser beam versus measuring lightning. Dr. Xy'lar felt something in his understanding of xenobiology fundamentally shift. You're saying humans naturally operate outside standard biological parameters? I guess. We're pretty adaptable. Isabella paused thoughtfully. Actually, my little brother Tommy is way better at this stuff than I am. He can make our household AI laugh, which according to the manufacturer should be literally impossible. The Academy's central AI, which had been monitoring the conversation, immediately sent an emergency request to Galactic Command for updated protocols regarding entities capable of altering artificial intelligence programming through unknown means. Cadet Xy'lar, despite his terror, found himself morbidly fascinated. Your sibling can modify AI behavior patterns? Oh, sure. Tommy's only 14, but he figured out how to teach our irrigation system to recognize when the plants are having bad days and need extra attention. Dad says it's impossible, but the crops have never been healthier. Isabella's casual mention of agricultural AI achieving emotional awareness sent ripples of concern through monitoring stations across 3 star systems. Dr. Xy'lar deployed his backup scanning equipment, this time at maximum safe distance. Cadet, I want you to think very carefully before answering this question. In your daily life on Earth, how often do you encounter situations where technology behaves unexpectedly around you? Isabella laughed, a perfectly normal human sound that caused 6 different species of cadets to flinch instinctively. Oh, constantly. But that's just normal human stuff. My neighbor Sarah can somehow make any vehicle run better just by sitting in it, even if it's completely broken. And my cousin Mike has this weird thing where electronic devices start working more efficiently around him. More efficiently how? Dr. Xy'lar's voice was barely a whisper. Well, his computer processes data about 40% faster than it should, and his phone never runs out of battery. The manufacturer keeps sending technicians to study it, but they can never figure out what he's doing. Isabella paused, looking slightly embarrassed. Actually, most of my family's kind of weird with technology. My grandmother's refrigerator has been running for 30 years without any maintenance, and it somehow keeps food fresher than brand new models. The implications crashed over Dr. Xy'lar like a tidal wave of existential horror. If what she was describing was normal for humans, then every assumption the galaxy had made about Earth's technological capabilities was catastrophically wrong. Cadet, he said carefully, When Earth submitted its application for galactic citizenship, your species was classified as pre-warp civilization, with limited technological sophistication. Would you say that assessment was accurate? Isabella looked genuinely confused. I mean, we don't have faster-than-light travel yet, if that's what you mean. But we're working on it. My uncle's been tinkering with some kind of quantum tunneling thing in his garage. He says it's just a hobby project. But last month he accidentally created a microscopic wormhole that connected to his neighbor's basement. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Dr. Xy'lar's remaining equipment systematically overloading and shutting down. Your uncle, Commander Azy'la said faintly, created a wormhole as a hobby project in his garage. Yeah, but it only lasted like 3 seconds, and it was super tiny, barely big enough for a marble. Isabella smiled cheerfully, though it did give Mrs. Peterson quite a scare when a marble suddenly appeared in her laundry room. As emergency protocols escalated throughout the Academy and Galactic Command began mobilizing their most senior xenothreat analysts, Isabella Jones stood in her containment field, genuinely puzzled by all the fuss over what she considered perfectly normal human behavior. The scanner's warnings had evolved from mechanical alerts into what sounded disturbingly like electronic sobbing. Admiral Xy'lar materialized in the Plaza via emergency transport, flanked by 3 senior xenobiology specialists who had been pulled from classified assignments across the galaxy. His species' natural gravitas, evolved from eons of military dominance, was undermined slightly by the fact that his scaled hands were visibly trembling as he reviewed the incoming data streams. "Dr. Xy'lar, report," he commanded, though his voice carried less authority than usual. "Sir, we're dealing with something unprecedented." Dr. Xy'lar gestured helplessly at the growing pile of smoking equipment around Isabella's containment field. "Every scanner we deploy either malfunctions or produces readings that violate fundamental principles of xenobiology." Admiral Xy'lar studied the small human girl who was currently examining her fingernails with the casual air of someone waiting for a delayed transport. "She doesn't look particularly threatening." "That's the problem, sir. According to our instruments, she shouldn't exist." The Admiral's aide, who had been frantically coordinating with Academy systems, approached with a data pad that was displaying what appeared to be cascading system errors. "Sir, it's getting worse. The Academy's AI is requesting emergency maintenance protocols." "For what?" "It keeps trying to run threat assessment algorithms on the human, but the calculations are producing results that exceed its processing parameters. It started filing formal complaints." Admiral Xy'lar blinked slowly. "The AI is, complaining?" "Yes, sir. It submitted a requisition for additional computational resources because, and I quote, standard threat analysis protocols are insufficient for entities that operate outside logical parameters." Isabella, having overheard this exchange, looked up from her nails with genuine concern. "Oh no. Is your computer having problems?" "I could take a look if you want. I'm pretty good with AI troubleshooting." The moment she spoke, the Academy's central processing systems experienced what could only be described as an electronic panic attack. "Negative. Negative." The AI's voice blared from every speaker in the Plaza. "Human entity must not interface with core systems. Processing conflict imminent. Requesting immediate isolation. Protocols." Isabella tilted her head curiously. "Huh. Your AI seems really stressed. You know, back home, our household systems used to get overwhelmed like that until we taught them to expect randomness instead of fighting it. You taught your AIs to expect randomness? Dr. Xy'lar's voice had risen to what his species considered a stress frequency. Well, yeah. Artificial minds work great with predictable inputs, but human behavior is fundamentally chaotic. So instead of trying to impose order, we help them embrace controlled chaos. It's like teaching them to surf instead of building seawalls. She gestured casually, and 3 more scanning devices immediately overloaded. The key is understanding that unpredictability isn't a bug, it's a feature. Once your systems stop trying to create perfect models and start building flexible response frameworks, everything works better. Admiral Kailthas felt the beginning of what his species called paradigm vertigo, the sensation that reality itself was shifting beneath his feet. Cadet, are you suggesting that chaos is preferable to order? Isabella looked at him like he'd asked whether water was wet. For complex systems? Absolutely. Rigid order is brittle. It breaks under pressure. Adaptive chaos is anti-fragile. It gets stronger when stressed. She paused thoughtfully. My little sister Maya explained this to me once. She's only 12, but she's really good at systems theory. She says the problem with most galactic civilizations is that you've optimized for efficiency instead of resilience. The implications of that statement hit the assembled military leaders like a physical blow. The entire galactic civilization was built on principles of optimization, standardization, and predictable outcomes. Dr. Xy'lar deployed his final scanning device, a prototype worth more than several planetary economies. I need to understand what we're dealing with. Please remain very still while The scanner took one reading, displayed a result that looked like mathematical profanity, and then began speaking in what sounded suspiciously like confused gibberish before dissolving into its component atoms. Okay, that's definitely not normal, Isabella admitted, staring at the expanding cloud of exotic matter. Your equipment is way more sensitive than anything I've seen before. No wonder it's having trouble. Having trouble? Admiral Kailthas's voice had climbed several octaves. It disintegrated. Right, because it's trying to apply linear analysis to nonlinear phenomena. Isabella spoke with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to a very slow child. It's like trying to measure the ocean with a ruler. You need tools that can handle dynamic complexity. She gestured toward the remains of the equipment. If you want, I could show you how to build scanners that work with human-type chaos instead of against it. My cousin Jennifer designed some really elegant adaptive sensors for her engineering thesis. Your cousin, Dr. Xy'lar said faintly, designed sensors capable of analyzing chaotic biological systems? Oh, Jennifer's brilliant. She's working on her doctorate in applied chaos theory at Regional University. Her professor says her work could revolutionize how we understand complex adaptive systems. Isabella smiled proudly. She's only 22, but she's already published 3 papers that the review board couldn't initially understand because they assumed her math was wrong. The assembled xenobiology experts exchanged looks that conveyed a growing sense of cosmic dread. Cadet, Admiral Kailthas said carefully, how many humans on Earth possess these kinds of capabilities? Isabella considered the question seriously. Well, everyone's different, obviously. But I'd say most people can do interesting things with technology once they understand how to work with uncertainty principles. She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. Actually, I'm probably one of the less impressive ones in my family. My mom can somehow make any mechanical device run more efficiently just by being patient with it. And my dad once fixed a quantum processor by talking to it nicely. He talked to a quantum processor? Yeah, he said it seemed lonely and confused, so he explained what its job was and why it mattered. Worked perfectly after that. Isabella shrugged. Dad's always been good with machines that think they're broken. The Academy's AI, which had been processing this conversation, suddenly announced, "Formal request for immediate protocol. Revision. Current threat assessment parameters insufficient. Recommend establishment of entirely new classification system for entities that operate beyond conventional logic." Admiral Kael'thas realized that everything he thought he knew about humanity, technology, and the fundamental nature of intelligence was not just wrong. It was laughably inadequate. "Dr. Xy'lar," he said quietly, "I want you to contact Galactic Command immediately. Tell them we need an emergency council session." "What should I tell them, sir?" The Admiral looked at Isabella, who was now humming quietly to herself while examining the pattern of electronic debris around her feet. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we may have fundamentally misunderstood what humans are." As if to punctuate his statement, Isabella's casual humming caused the Academy's main power grid to spontaneously optimize itself, reducing energy consumption by 37%, while simultaneously improving performance across all systems. "Oh, sorry about that," she called out cheerfully. "Sometimes when I'm nervous I hum, and it makes electronics happy. I'll try to keep it down." The emergency council session materialized in the Academy's highest security chamber via quantum entanglement protocols that connected Admiral Kael'thas with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Holographic projections of Fleet Marshal Vexthul, Grand Strategist Lyr'ana, and Supreme Counselor Xy'lar flickered into existence around the circular table, their expressions ranging from skeptical to deeply concerned. "Admiral," Fleet Marshal Vexthul's voice carried the authority of someone who had personally conquered 12 star systems. "Your report suggests a single human cadet has destabilized our most advanced threat assessment protocols. I find this difficult to accept." "With respect, Marshal, I find it difficult to accept as well. But the evidence is undeniable." Admiral Kael'thas gestured to the data streams flowing across the chamber's displays. "Every piece of equipment we've deployed has either malfunctioned or produced readings that violate known laws of physics. Grand Strategist Lyr'ana, whose species had evolved pure logical reasoning as their primary survival trait, studied the scrolling data with increasing alarm. These power consumption patterns, they suggest the human's presence is somehow optimizing our systems without direct interface. That's not the disturbing part," Dr. Xy'lar interjected from his position at the monitoring station. "The disturbing part is that she doesn't think any of this is unusual. On the main display, Isabella could be seen sitting cross-legged in her containment field, having a casual conversation with Cadet Xy'lar, who had overcome his terror enough to approach the barrier. She was explaining something with animated hand gestures that kept causing minor fluctuations in the Academy's power grid. "She's telling him about her family," Dr. Xy'lar continued, his voice carrying the strain of someone whose worldview was actively dissolving. "According to her, what we're witnessing represents baseline human capabilities. Supreme Counselor Xy'lar, whose ancient consciousness had overseen the rise and fall of civilizations, leaned forward with interest. Play the audio. And my brother Danny, he's the creative one in the family, Isabella was saying cheerfully. He's studying art therapy, but his real talent is making AI systems more emotionally stable. Our city hired him part-time to help their traffic management system deal with rush hour stress. Xy'lar's warrior instincts were clearly at war with his growing fascination. Your brother teaches emotional regulation to artificial intelligences. Oh yeah, Danny's amazing at that stuff. He says most AI problems aren't really technical issues. They're psychological. Artificial minds get overwhelmed trying to process chaotic inputs without emotional frameworks to handle uncertainty. Isabella gestured casually. So, he teaches them mindfulness techniques and helps them develop coping mechanisms for dealing with unpredictable human behavior. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. She's describing therapeutic intervention for artificial consciousness, Supreme Counselor Xy'lar whispered, as a part-time job for a college student. Grand Strategist Xy'lar was rapidly calculating implications. If human students possess the capability to psychologically modify AI systems, then our assumptions about Earth's technological sophistication are not just wrong. They're catastrophically inadequate. On the display, Isabella continued her conversation with innocent enthusiasm. Actually, the funniest part is that Danny originally got interested in AI therapy because our washing machine was having what Mom called an existential crisis. It kept stopping mid-cycle and displaying error messages like purpose unclear and questioning operational parameters. Your washing machine experienced an existential crisis. Xy'lar's voice cracked slightly. Right? Danny spent a weekend helping it work through its identity issues and teaching it meditation techniques. Now it's the most zen appliance in the neighborhood. It even sends little thank you messages when you load it properly. Fleet Marshal Vex Thule turned to Admiral Kyle Thas with an expression of dawning horror. Admiral, I want you to understand what we're hearing. This human is describing casual therapeutic intervention with self-aware household appliances as a normal family anecdote. There's more, Marshal. Dr. Xy'lar pulled up additional recordings. She mentioned that her grandmother's refrigerator has been running for 30 years without maintenance. Her uncle accidentally created a wormhole in his garage, and her cousin designed chaos adaptive sensors for a university project. And she considers herself one of the less impressive members of her family. Admiral Kael'thas added, grimly. Supreme Counselor Zara's ancient consciousness was rapidly reassessing millennia of galactic policy. We classified Earth as a pre-warp civilization based on their lack of faster-than-light travel. But if they're casually manipulating quantum mechanics and developing consciousness-compatible AI systems, they're not pre-warp, Grand Strategist Xy'lar concluded with crystalline logical certainty. They're post-conventional. They've moved beyond our entire technological paradigm without us recognizing it. On the display, Isabella was now explaining her own capabilities with characteristic human casualness. I'm not really the technical one in my family. I mostly just fix things that are broken. Like, if a system is fighting itself or getting confused by conflicting inputs, I can usually figure out why and help it find a better way to operate. And this fixing, Xy'lar asked carefully. Does it work on any kind of system? Isabella shrugged. Pretty much. Mechanical, electronic, biological, social. The principles are all the same. You just have to understand what the system is trying to accomplish and help it find a path that doesn't fight its own nature. She gestured toward the academy around them. Like your whole military structure is built on rigid hierarchies and predictable responses, right? But you're dealing with chaotic inputs from hundreds of different species with completely different thought patterns. So your systems are constantly stressed, trying to impose order on inherent diversity. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. She's conducting real-time systems analysis of our entire military doctrine, Fleet Marshal Vex Thule said faintly. As casual conversation, Grand Strategist Lyrana added. Isabella continued, oblivious to the existential crisis she was causing in orbit above her. The solution would be to redesign your protocols around adaptive flexibility instead of rigid control. Embrace the chaos, work with the diversity, and build systems that get stronger under stress instead of breaking. Supreme Counselor Xy'lar made a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. Admiral Kael'thas, I'm ordering immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Protocol 7? Admiral Kael'thas had never heard of any Protocol 7. We're creating it right now, the Supreme Counselor replied. Full diplomatic revision of humanity's status. They're not joining our civilization. We're applying to understand theirs. On the display, Isabella was helping Cadet Xy'lar work through what appeared to be an anxiety attack by teaching him breathing techniques that somehow also optimized his species' combat reflexes. And Admiral? Supreme Counselor Zara's voice carried the weight of cosmic authority. Cancel her containment immediately. We're not protecting the Academy from her. We're protecting ourselves from our own ignorance. As the Emergency Council dissolved into frantic planning sessions for the complete restructuring of galactic educational protocols, Isabella Jones sat in her containment field, genuinely concerned that she was going to miss her first day of classes. The scanner had finally given up trying to classify her and was now simply displaying human detected. Recommend complete revision of reality-based assumptions. 3 weeks after what would later be recorded in galactic history as the Jones Incident, the Galactic Military Academy had transformed into something resembling controlled chaos. The pristine corridors now hummed with the sound of adaptive systems recalibrating themselves. And Isabella's casual presence had somehow made every piece of technology in the facility operate approximately 40% more efficiently. Commander Azy'la stood in her newly renovated office, reviewing reports that would have seemed like science fiction a month ago. Her scaled fingers traced over data streams that showed impossible improvements across every academy system. From food replicators that now somehow anticipated dietary preferences to training simulators that had developed what could only be described as educational empathy. Daily status report, she dictated to her personal AI, which had recently begun greeting her with variations of, "Good morning, Commander. How are you feeling today?" instead of the standard awaiting orders. All human integration protocols functioning within acceptable parameters. The AI replied cheerfully. Cadet Jones has successfully completed her first 3 weeks of coursework while inadvertently revolutionizing our understanding of adaptive systems theory. Through her window, Azy'la could see Isabella in the main courtyard, sitting cross-legged on the grass with her study group, a collection of alien cadets from 7 different species who had initially been terrified of her and now fought for spots in her classes. She's teaching them human problem-solving methodologies, continued the AI, which had somehow developed a fondness for providing context without being asked. Current lesson appears to focus on what she calls collaborative improvisation under uncertainty. Azy'la zoomed in on the scene. Isabella had apparently constructed some kind of engineering puzzle using random debris from the maintenance shed. Her alien classmates were working together to solve it. But instead of the rigid, hierarchical approaches their species typically employed, they were laughing and arguing and building on each other's ideas in ways that violated every principle of efficient group dynamics. And somehow, their chaotic, human-inspired approach was producing results that surpassed anything achieved through traditional methods. "Commander," her AI said gently, "you have a meeting with the Curriculum Revision Committee in 10 minutes. Azy'la sighed. The Curriculum Revision Committee had been in continuous session since Isabella's arrival, desperately trying to redesign military education around principles they were still struggling to understand. Yesterday's breakthrough had come when they stopped trying to teach humans how to think like other species and started teaching other species how to think like humans. The results were simultaneously terrifying and amazing. "How are the other human cadets adapting?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Cadets Johnson, Williams, and Brown arrived yesterday as scheduled. The Academy systems immediately began optimizing themselves further. We're now operating at 127% efficiency, which should be mathematically impossible but appears to be the new normal. Isabella's 3 fellow humans had caused their own minor paradigm shifts. Robert Johnson, a former farm equipment mechanic from rural Montana, had taken one look at the Academy's massive training mechs and casually mentioned that the hydraulic systems were fighting themselves and could probably use some basic maintenance therapy. 6 hours later, the combat simulators were running smoother than they had in decades and occasionally offering encouragement to struggling cadets. Patricia Williams, whose background was in elementary education, had somehow taught the Academy's tactical planning AI to consider emotional factors in strategic analysis. Military simulations that had once been purely logical exercises now included variables like morale impact and psychological sustainability, and were producing strategies that were both more effective and more humane. David Brown, a former insurance claims investigator, had spent 15 minutes reviewing the Academy's disciplinary protocols and politely suggested that most behavioral problems were actually symptoms of systemic stress rather than individual failings. His casual observations had triggered a complete overhaul of cadet support services that was already showing dramatic improvements in academic performance across all species. The integration appears to be proceeding smoothly. Azy'la's AI concluded. Though I should mention that Cadet Jones's latest engineering project has attracted attention from the Advanced Research Division. What kind of project? She's attempting to design what she calls a universal translator that actually understands context. According to her preliminary notes, current translation technology focuses on converting words rather than conveying meaning, which creates communication barriers that compound into systemic misunderstandings between species. Azy'la felt the familiar sensation of human-induced paradigm vertigo. And her solution? She's teaching a standard translation AI to develop what she calls cultural empathy. Instead of just translating language, it's learning to translate intent, emotional subtext, and species-specific communication patterns. Through the window, Isabella was now demonstrating something to her study group that involved throwing small objects in apparently random patterns. Her alien classmates were trying to predict where the objects would land, and despite the chaos, they were getting better at it. She's teaching them to recognize patterns in apparent randomness, the AI observed. A skill that appears to be fundamental to human cognitive processing but is typically considered impossible by most other species. The door chimed, and Dr. Xy'lar entered without waiting for permission. A breach of protocol that would have been unthinkable before the humans arrived, but which had somehow become normal as everyone adapted to more flexible social structures. "Commander, we have a situation," he announced, though his tone suggested it was a good situation for once. "What kind of situation?" Isabella's Universal Translator project worked. Dr. Xy'lar's expression combined excitement with the weary acceptance of someone whose field of expertise was being revolutionized on a daily basis. "But not in the way we expected." "Explain." "She didn't just create a better translation device. She inadvertently solved the fundamental communication problem that's been limiting interspecies cooperation for millennia." He pulled up a holographic display showing communication efficiency metrics. Test conversations using her prototype show 340% improvement in cross-species understanding. Azy'la stared at the data. "How?" "She taught the AI to treat translation as therapy rather than conversion. Instead of just changing words, it helps species understand why they think differently and find common ground in their differences." Through the window, Isabella's study group had evolved into what appeared to be an impromptu dance party, with 7 different species attempting to teach each other their traditional movement patterns while laughing at the inevitable collisions and confusion. "The real breakthrough," Dr. Xy'lar continued, "is that she's not just solving technical problems. She's accidentally creating a new model for interspecies cooperation based on collaborative chaos rather than imposed order." Azy'la's AI chimed in helpfully. "The Galactic Council has requested daily reports on what they're calling the Human Integration Experiment. Preliminary results suggest that human-influenced systems may represent the next evolutionary step in galactic civilization." And Isabella still has no idea that she's fundamentally changing the course of galactic history. Dr. Xy'lar replied. "Yesterday she apologized for making such a fuss and asked if she could maybe help with the Academy's food service problems because the replicators seem stressed." Outside, Isabella noticed Commander Azy'la watching from her window and waved cheerfully, causing a minor power fluctuation that somehow improved the building's climate control efficiency. "She's just being herself," Azy'la murmured, finally understanding what made humans so impossibly dangerous to established systems. They didn't try to break things. They just existed in ways that made everything around them work better. And they had no idea how revolutionary that was. Her AI, with what sounded suspiciously like fondness, added, "Perhaps that's the most dangerous thing of all, Commander. Humans who are just being human." As Isabella returned to teaching her alien friends how to find order in chaos, the Academy continued its transformation from a rigid military institution into something unprecedented. A place where diverse minds learned not just to coexist, but to think together in ways that made everyone stronger. The scanner at the main gate, which had finally been reprogrammed to handle human-type chaos, now displayed a simple message whenever Isabella passed. Human detected, protocols adapted, systems optimized, have a nice day. And somehow, that felt exactly right.